be covering during the year. So what are the activities that we're going to be managing? So we've got quite a lot of topics that we've already identified, and we've gone out to the wider membership as well to get their feedback. So we're asking people to complete a questionnaire so that that can inform our thinking. I hope you think that's a worthwhile thing to do, because then the purpose, as I think most of you know, is that this working group is looking at things from an operations perspective to identify what are the key things that people that are involved in this part of the process are going to be focused on. But obviously we need to share that with the other working groups, design, construction, etc., so that we can then determine what work streams we're actually going to be working from that. So, you know, for example, a lot of the activity this last sort of 6 months or so has been around the deadline that has just passed, actually, on Monday, for having all of the information ready for the premises information boxes, or secure information boxes, as we now need to call them, because Gerda have patented, I believe, the term premises information box. So I don't know if you're all aware of that, but that's why we're using the term SIB now rather than PIB. So what we wanted to do was to look at things from, obviously that's been front and center on a lot of people's radar, but the people that are involved in the building safety side of things, there's quite a lot more that needs to be accommodated, and there is a concern that I think we've all had, that we could be simply focusing on what is needed for the secure information box for the fire rescue authorities without looking at the wider regulatory issues. So what we've proposed is that as we look at things from some sort of prioritization perspective, to say what should we be focusing on, and therefore we can get our plans in place for this next year. So I've got a couple of guests that have joined us. We're two people that we're working with now. One is John Holt, and John's a fire engineer, fire specialist, and what he does is fire door inspections and also recommendations for what work needs to be done. So I'm going to be asking John to give a little bit of a run through of the methodology that he and his team offer later on in the process. We're also lucky to have with us Alan Oliver. Now, Alan is a specialist in fire doors and fire door inspections, and he's done a lot of work with the NHS to come up with standardized methods and processes of doing fire door inspections. So I think one of the things that he's done with the NHS is produced a guide that can be used to educate people around that process, and that's something that is being used in the NHS. Now, I know John also does work in the NHS, so this might be news to you, John. So I appreciate your perspective on it as well. But the reason Alan's here is that he's offered to provide that resource to BIM4Housing so that we can bring together our experts in fire doors to actually identify a standard set of methods of being able to identify what doors need to be done, what needs to be done to them, so that we've got a way of grading that. So Alan's going to give us a bit of a run through on that later as well. So what I'd like to quite do though is we've got quite a few landlords in the group here today. Oh, there's one other person that is has joined us, and that's Paul Bray from Plymouth. Now, Paul's fire. I'll let him introduce himself a little bit later, but he's also he's working on the as a landlord, but he's also a member of Cross, which is the reporting organisation. And I think that will be a useful thing for us to just understand a little bit more about Cross. I don't know how many people are aware of it, but it's an organisation that certainly we want to be collaborating with. So what I'd first like to do, though, is just get a quick update from people as to where they are on the journey. What's been what have you been doing this last sort of 3 months? What are you doing? Where are you in that process, and what are you planning to do? So I wondered if I could ask for maybe some volunteers of where if I know Bex responded to me earlier. She was quite happy to give us an initial run through. Bex, are you there at the moment? Hi, Bex.
Yes,
So,
I'm here. Can you hear me?
would you mind? I'm sorry to pick on you at the beginning, but if you could set the standard just to give us a quick update as to where Live West is in the process, and then perhaps some of the other landlords could give us their views as well.
Yeah, of course. So on the list that you sent to me, my main focus really is the Fire Safety Act and the Building Safety Act. Those are the elements that I concentrate on in my role, so I'll focus on those. So the SIB documents for the Fire Safety Act, we've got them all in place. We've sent them to the Fire Rescue Service using the relevant online portals, which has been an experience, but not an overly negative one. The ones that we've used haven't had the same. I saw the thing on LinkedIn about the London
Yeah.
one and how bizarre that was. But the ones I've used have generally made the use of the Microsoft Forms, and they've been quite easy to navigate. And the only comment I have is when you click submit, there's no record of what you've submitted. So you know, if you've made an error, you can't double, but we're in really close liaison with our officer anyway. So we've run everything past them. We've had our measured surveys undertaken for our HRBs as part of the building safety case activities, but they've been very useful for the fire rescue service because they have asked for that too. So that's been quite handy, and they have all of the details of the fire equipment included on them as well. And we've also done a cover page where we've done the access and then just an overview. So in the SIB box, just an overview of what that building has in it, how many stories, how many residents, who looks after it, what the external wall construction is. I can show you an example one if you'd like to see that.
Yes, please. That would be really helpful.
Yeah, not a problem. I'll just quickly get that up. So it's kind of what we've done internally. They're not overly complex, but they're not designed to be. They are the first thing that the fire service would see when they turn up at site. So let me just which building shall I do? I will do that one.
So
So
Bex, who's actually
yes.
creating them? Is it the survey firms that you've commissioned to do the work that are producing them?
So the thing I'm about to show you was created internally by our team, but we have had measured surveys undertaken as
Yeah.
well. So what I'm about to show you is information that we've gained from on site and things that we think would be good for the fire service. So let's use this one, I'm just opening it now and I'll share my screen with you. It's all very loud. So can everyone see that?
Yeah.
So it's really high level. So this is what we've shared with the fire service as well as part of the PDF document pack. And so this is one of our high risk buildings. And what it does, it just gives you, how to get in, where the hydrants are, where the dry risers are, where the basic stuff that the fire service are going to need. And we've basically taken it from it's not the Google Maps, but it's from one of the OS Maps sort of websites, and put the red lines on. And down here we've got all of the key info that they're going to need. So what is it made of? How high is it? How many flats has it got? So yeah, it's very basic, but we think that it's going to be incredibly useful. And then following on from that, oh, this isn't one that I've had the measured survey back yet. Bad example. Following on from that, I've attached the measured surveys that we've had for other buildings, for example, and they look a bit like this. So it's got your key. We're going to make this clearer. But it's got your key fire detection, your riser inlets. When we commissioned the measured survey, we asked them to do all of these specific things, just to support our building safety case and the fire regs too. So in terms of drawings and plans, that's where we are with those, and we've sent them via email to all of the services. Some of them have upload stuff because we've got 3 different fire rescue service. We've got Devon and Cornwall. Oh no, we've got Cornwall, Devon and going mad here, aren't I? Cornwall, Devon and Somerset, and Avon and something else, Avon and Somerset. But there's 3 of them, and so they all have slightly different ways of receiving information. So we've just been busy doing that. In addition, we've installed the fire signage in all levels, the firefighting signage, so that those were quite good. They don't, and you know what? They look all right. They look all right. Yeah. So that's good, and yeah.
And you've done that for how many buildings, Bex?
So we're quite lucky in that our higher risk portfolio isn't large. We've got 6 that are under the Act.
Okay.
But we've got 12 that we're kind of looking at as our own higher risk, because of the occupancy. So we have quite a tight rein on them, which we're quite lucky to have.
Yeah, I've got one question that we're experiencing, because we're doing this we're working with Tower Hamlets and Origin on this. One of the questions is that the people that are doing the measured surveys, that they may not have the expertise to actually identify which lifts are fire lifts, for example. And even which doors are fire doors, because although it's a door and it's an entrance door, they certainly wouldn't be able to identify whether it's a 30 or a 60-minute. Is that something that you're looking to do sort of incrementally?
Interesting you should say that. So we have a few of these surveys and projects in the pipeline, and part of what we're using the measured surveys for is, so we have them done by a company who have then appointed a fire engineer, because we want retrospective fire strategies for each one of our HRBs.
That's what I thought.
Buildings change a lot during their life cycle, and we just needed that, okay, where that line in the sand. So we said, let's get everything in place from when we received that info. And the fire strategies have been very interesting, actually. You look back and you think, okay, well, that explains what's going on there. So they are measured survey / employer's agent and the fire engineer working very closely together, and which we're also very lucky to have, because I think that's quite a rare rare sort of connection. So
Yeah,
we've been quite lucky, but we spent a while, it's a lot of prep work was gone into that. So
that's really interesting. Ella May, you've got your hand up. Where are you from, Ella May?
Hello, yeah, sorry, I've chucked it up tonight. I'm Metropolitan Thames Valley Housing.
Brilliant.
So yeah, I'm just the Waking Watch contracts manager, but I've been working with our team a lot on mainly the SIBs. I keep saying PIBs. I need to get used to saying SIBs. But we're mainly doing the boxes at the moment we've been focusing on them for the site. So we've moved from stay put to fully evac, where we've had to deploy Waking Watches and put new alarms in. So they've kind of been our focus, and we've started putting things in there. But I was using Bex, thank you, because that was really, really, really useful, just looking at some of the stuff you've done. We've been using the guidance I've chucked in the chat, and I'm sure everyone's been looking at that. So the stuff that I've been making with the FST team is essentially the on arrival information sheets. We're a bit behind with the nice key map. So we've got like the land reg and quite a lot of floor maps, but a lot of them are just, you can't imagine the FRS on arrival going through some of the maps that we've got. So I think we definitely need to look at the stuff that you've done. I just wanted to ask you, Bex, did you outsource the really nice key one that looks really easy to read? Was that outsourced or made internally?
That was actually internal.
Okay.
Me and the head of building safety sort of designed that. We went through it, but it's designed because we have quite, like I said, we have a real grip on our HRBs because we don't have a huge portfolio of them. We really know our buildings well. So actually we were in the best place to design that document. And also we could get it done fairly quickly, the lead in time for something like that, and trying to get that kind of simplicity from an from an external contractor is sometimes challenging. So
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much, Bex. Could I get maybe another volunteer from one of the landlords? Could somebody step up? Give us a view of where you're at. Hello, Jack.
How you doing, George?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah. So we've done. I guess I'll not bore you too long. Some kind of fairly similar experiences. I think I've not done the actual submissions themselves, so that was quite interesting. That they're a bit of a pain, but so we created our floor plans, or we created half of our floor plans, kind of quite roughly from existing floor plans that we'd found on planning portals, etc., and just kind of marked them up, and the other half from the scans that would turn into 3D models, and then used the NFCC guidance to kind of put them into a format that we thought would be acceptable. We didn't necessarily put a huge amount of time and effort in getting them. Some of those were a lot more detailed that we just saw from Bex there than what we did. We work across a number of different AHJs, and we don't know what they'll come back to say. This, we'd like more information on this, we'd like more detail on that. So we just put it's kind of fairly basic in terms of lifts, control panels, etc. Without going down to too much detail. That was quite easy to do because we do have the models, so we'd used models and our 3D models, created floor plans for structural surveys, and then it's just a case of creating some new keys to fit with the NFCC guidance. So we managed to turn that around quite quickly, and then we'll update those lower quality floor plans to our 3D models as we continue to model the rest of our buildings. Yeah, so that's where we are really with it.
Thank you. Claire.
Hi. So since the last meeting, I've switched seats from London Borough of Hackney to now London Borough of Enfield. and I feel like I've gone back in time a bit. There's not been anyone in post for the last year, near enough. And although the portfolio is smaller, we have 54 high-rise blocks and plus about another 11 to add to that if you go from 11 meters. There's less that has been achieved due to various different issues, but so what we're doing at the moment is searching out the information mostly. So we haven't uploaded anything yet to portals, and really kind of trying to work fast to catch up with everyone else, I think. So yeah, not in such a good position, unfortunately.
Okay, all right. But that's really helpful anyway. Where did Camden get? Sorry, Hackney get to?
So that they have a very big portfolio of high-rise blocks. So I don't know if they've been able to actually upload any drawings yet, but they were sort of much further ahead with the production of them when I left before Christmas. So I would imagine that they've been able to. All the site boxes were populated with information.
Oh, good.
And yeah, the actual drawings, some were produced, ready to go, but I don't know whether they've been able to get those ready for all of the blocks yet. But yeah, they're a lot further forward. For example, with Enfield now, we haven't actually got any site boxes up yet. So they're trudging their way through the post, apparently, to be ready to be screwed to the walls. So yeah, we're definitely much further behind.
In terms, one of the questions I would ask, but I obviously like some other contributors to prepare to step up. Alan May, have you got? Is your hand up still from when you asked? That's cool. Yeah. So
no, it wasn't. But if there was, I was going to ask one more thing, but I'll wait until you're.
Yeah, sure. So if the other landlords could be ready for when I pick on you, I'd be most grateful. I can see Paul there. Go on.
Yep. Sorry, Paul just asked in the chat if anyone bought non-girder, and Hackney did. They went to LFS, who produced their own design of boxes, which was significantly cheaper, but met pretty much the same criteria. So they went with LFS instead of girder.
So would they have? Presumably, they've got a different key.
Yes, they've got a different key. Yeah.
Okay.
So is the intention to give sets of those keys to the local FRS?
Yeah.
Yeah. The bunch
Paul,
gets bigger.
Yeah. Paul Bray from Plymouth, could you give us now Paul's a former firefighter, so he's got very practical experience.
Yeah, hello, good morning. It's very interesting hearing everybody's experience of trying to get compliance with the new fire safety regulations that came in on Monday. I sometimes feel that I'm either walking in treacle or chasing my tail trying to get everything done by Monday, and we haven't. We're not in as good a place as Live West are. I've been furiously taking notes, and I may get in touch with Bex later, if possible, to just to get a consistent approach to. I like the on arrival template. I've got quite a good contacts within Devon and Somerset Fire and Rescue Service, not Devon and Cornwall, as a lot of people like to call it because of the police force. So we've been working closely on the information that's been in the secure information boxes. We've got our secure information box has been in place for a long time, so it's just making sure the information is correct. The problem I'm getting at the moment is getting accurate plans to download to the site that Devon and Somerset have set up, which only went live on Friday, I think, last week. So there's a lot for us to still to do. I think we're in a reasonably good place. We're quite well advanced on the fire door check-in info stuff. I'll be interested to see where the fire door stuff comes from there. The other contributors about fire door in a minute. The bit about the girder boxes, I think that's quite interesting because those girder boxes are really expensive, and the keys for the girder boxes, well, over £1,000 has cost us, and they've got to be bespoke for every area that you serve. So the key is for the fire and rescue service, not for the box. So they're looking for a universal key for the fire and rescue service. So you can't just plonk in any girder box in any area that you think. So I'm interested in price, even though we've already bought that. George, I'm more than happy to carry on talking about the, where we are with PCH, who I work for Community Homes. But I think I'm in a really similar place to everybody else. We're at a place, we're not where we want to be, but we're getting towards that, I feel. And it's trying to make sure that the information is consistent across all our buildings. We got 6 high-rise that come under, and that come within scope, but we've also got 7 shelter schemes that I want to bring into a similar standard. I was interested in the survey, the measured survey. Who did the measured survey and how did you commission that? I'd be interested to know, because we're just using information that we've already got. So I'd be interested in knowing that. But also, George, did you want me to mention about Cross now, or?
Yes, actually, that might break things up a little bit and give people a chance to prepare what they're thinking as well. So could you just take 5 minutes to explain about Cross?
I'll try my best. I'm not the expert. I said to George before when we met, I wanted to try and promote Cross. I was invited to become part of the expert panel for fire safety of Cross back in September by an ex-Devon Somerset colleague, Neil Gibbons, who was the international chair of the IFE for a while and still is heavily involved with the IFE. So through my links with that and the fact that I've been involved in fire safety for many years through the fire service, and then my role in housing, was invited that because I bring a different aspect. And Cross has not been involved in housing. They haven't got many links into housing. They spoke at a fire safety, building safety managers forum yesterday that I was at, which is chaired by people from Trafalgar Housing. So that was useful for Cross. But I'll just talk about Cross itself, if I may. I can share you a page that is on their about site, but I'll just talk about it. So Cross stands for, first of all, Collaborative Reporting for Safety Structures. And there's an area set up in the UK, or a business, a group set up in the UK called Cross UK. And that it was first set up in 1976 to deal with issues around safety in structures. And from but since after the Grenfell Tower tragedy, Dame Judith Hackett said that there needs to be more information passed between organisations about fire safety issues found in buildings, and an ability to maybe whistleblow where there might be some issues that should be resolved. So from that inquiry, Dame Judith Hackett invited people from Cross to assist on the expert panel, and then she recommended the setting up of the fire safety branch of Cross, and that's where we are now. So that was set up following the Dame Judith Hackett report, following Grenfell Tower fire. And so initially it was an expert panel of 20 persons on the structural side to dealing with building safety. And now there's an expert panel with 20 fire safety people involved. Now, I'm no way as expert in some of the people that are there. There are people that have been involved in writing British standards, fire tests, fire engineers. There's a massive array and difference of people that are involved in it. But that brings together quite a useful DNA of people that can contribute to the reports that are received. I think it's really important to emphasise about Cross as well. It's all confidential. So if you found a problem or you feel there's a problem that's worth sharing, then you can send your concerns to an email or a link within Cross if you go to their page about any concerns you might have. It might be about a construction, or it might be about a material use within fire safety. It might be issues around fire doors. There's no limit. Then they'll make a decision about whether or not it's worth investigating further. There's only 1 or 2 people, I think I heard yesterday, there's 4 people within the whole of Cross that know who the original confidential to safe in making a report, which they don't want the person that making the report or the organisation making the report about. I think probably best if people look at the Cross web page in the first place and read the About You things on Cross, because you'll get a good understanding about what it's about. So it's about reporting safety concerns, and if you think about maybe the air industry, where it's about reporting the safety concerns and trying to find a remedy to prevent anything from happening, so near misses, but also about incidents that might have occurred. How do you prevent them from happening again? Basically a no blame culture. It's not about blaming people, it's about prevention. So really useful to get involved. When I spoke to George a couple of weeks ago about building BIMs for housing, there was something, I think, that there's a good connection between the two. And you've got your black box reporting, and I think that links up really well. I've asked Neil Gibbons from Cross to link up with George, and maybe you give a better representation of what Cross does. But there's loads to do. I'll put the link to the website on the chat, and then you can maybe have a look at it later. Would that be okay?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, and I think probably at a future meeting we'll arrange something. In fact, it probably makes sense to do a specific session just with Cross, because one of the things that we're trying to get to is something where we can actually make a difference and have actions. So the publications that we're producing obviously are good in terms of guidance, but actually being able to get that sort of reporting back, I think is going to be immensely useful. So right, on my screen, I've got lots of people who have joined. Some I wasn't aware of and I've not met yet. So therefore, I don't know which of you are landlords. So I'm just reading down at the moment. Judith Kellerman. I can't. Excuse me, but where are you from, Judith?
Hi everyone. Yeah, I'm Judith. I'm with PRP. So architect, yes, not the landlord side. So we do visit the landlords, but not the we are not them. So we are more focusing on the fire remediation at the moment in our team. So I think you may know Scott Sanderson, of course, from the architecture department. But upstairs, we are now, in my team at least, we're dealing with the fire remediation, external, following the Grenfell. Going back to Cross, I don't know, I just automatically thought about the two staircases, one staircase for a second. And I don't know what is just as a question, but that's me.
Cool. Thank you, Judith. Thank you. And just reading down, Matt Francis. Where are you from, Matt?
I'm Matt Francis from Civica, so I'm taking Alex Olman's place today. He couldn't make it, but he didn't want to miss out because I know he's very passionate about this. So he's asked me to come along his place, and I've been working with him in the background anyway. So
that's
trying to
fantastic.
Keep up from a software provider point of view, certainly not a landlord.
Okay, so I don't keep going on picking on people. Are there any other landlords that that are on that could contribute anything? No?
George,
Okay.
I was going to just quickly ask, sorry, I've already had a bit of a go, but about the peeps and how we display those, because we've made some new, I can show you if you want, we've made a bit of progress on
Oh, yes, please.
how we kind of visualize the peeps. So this was just an example where we've got quite a lot on a block. So we've kind of done in the NFCC guidance, I should take off the site name of that. In the NFCC guidance, it does say to kind of have this RAG rating of PEEP. So we've made, this is just a bit of an example. They do look a bit better when we're putting them in the boxes. And it's just showing floor by floor how many people on the different RAG rated of the PEEPs are on the floor. So yeah, that's just something that we've been working on across our full EVAC sites, where we want the LFB to be able to quickly identify who's there and how many waking watch wardens are there to help those people. So that's just one example of something we've done.
That's really helpful, and it actually brings me on to one of the questions that we're having at the moment. I don't know if Bex is still on with us, because I know that she got a meeting to go to. Are you still around, Bex? Yes, I think she perhaps is.
I am. The meeting got cancelled.
Okay. Now what you've shown is what I think most people are doing. They're focusing on the floor plans. But in the guidance, there's also sections and the type of thing that LMA has just shown there. But I get the impression that most people aren't delivering that at the moment. I just wondered whether stairwells and things like that, or is that yours?
Sorry, that's mine again. It was just this is just an example of a care and support scheme where pretty much everyone on site has got a PEEP or needs some kind of need. So that's a slight improvement of we're trying to split it up kind of on each facade and make sure it kind of makes sense for the floor plans. The only other thing I thought of is actually having this on top of the floor plan. So at this particular site, we started to put like the wheelchair symbol on the floor plan and make sure that the LFB knew exactly where they were, because even though these plans are kind of in the guidance, just to have a quick snapshot of where the PEEPs are, it doesn't help them say, well, how far away is it from the door to the stairway, and it's not as detailed. So it is just a quick snapshot of numbers of how many people are vulnerable on the site. So they have been quite helpful to work on. Even internally, they've been quite helpful to work on, just so we know quickly how many people we're looking at that need support. But yeah, there's definitely some stuff with your more visual key plan BECs that we'll probably start working on, and then have the PEEPs included on top of that as well, so they can see on each floor where these people are. And I know that they're not huge numbers at sites. We probably have about, not that many per block, but it is obviously really important.
Cool. Paul?
Yeah, one of the things that we've done is to consider putting a SIB in a building that wouldn't necessarily need it by virtue of its height or use, but where we have got a customer that is become recently sort of bed bound and doesn't want to move. So we've done our person-centered fire risk assessment, and they are relatively low risk. But we spoke to the local FRS, which in this case was Kent, and they thought it was really good practice, but it's not necessarily something that people would do by right. But it would tell the fire service attending a fire that's visible, oh, that's got an SIB. I wonder why that's in there. And if they open it, and perhaps we would have the PEEP information at the top, sounds more relevant. It's an idea worth sharing, but as all of you know, it's about £1,000 per SIB if you go the girder route, which we have, which does seem a shame, because it is quite a simple concept to have a secure box. But I think this time round, we ran out of time, like a lot of people.
Cool. Thank you very much, Paul. I think possibly now we can break on that. I'd now like to just give an explanation of the approach. Dave Williams from Origin. Dave, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I've been listening away.
Yeah, I just wondered if you could, because obviously, we're working together on this. I wondered if you could just give it a summary of the Origin strategy. We've talked about basically. I think you're in the same place as most other people, and that's getting something there into the SIBs, and then having a process of updating it. So I think the principal idea is that most people don't have everything 100% yet, but it's a matter of doing it progressively. And I think that's the approach that you're taking, isn't it, Dave?
Yeah. To be honest with you, I mean, that's the thing. We're sort of we're going with what the guidance is requiring first off, but basically not painting ourselves into a corner. So we're picking up other information as well, with a view that we'll then use that to enhance the maps and the models, with 360-degree photographs and things like that, that will be useful for other purposes rather than just doing it specifically for the guidance. So we're covering off the guidance as our key priority, but giving ourselves that option to enhance everything going forward. So, for instance, with the building plan, the building plans and the floor plans, although we're providing them in PDF format to the LFB and Hertfordshire Fire Brigade, which are our two big ones, we're also getting them in CAD drawing format, which then allows us in the future to be able to edit that as things get enhanced or things change, rather than just being stuck with a PDF and then not being able to do anything with it in the future. So that's one of the things that that people might take away from this if they are getting these plans done, that having them in both formats will come in handy in the future, particularly if there's changes to a building, etc. I mean, we've got buildings where we're at the moment removing cladding, and so that will make a change to the plans of the building, when we finish that remedial work, etc. Everything else, basically, everyone sounds like they're in the same place as we are, and in theory that shouldn't be a surprise, because we're all following the FSA legislation and guidance. So just one interesting thing, I had a conversation yesterday with our development team, because we've got some new developments coming online that are over 18 metres, and discussing, funny enough, the girder boxes and the keys and the padlocks. And one of the issues that they had that took a good 20 minutes of conversation going around the houses was not necessarily around the keys to the SIBs, but the keys to the riser cupboards. And I don't know whether you guys have come across the same thing, but obviously with the riser cupboards, in an ideal world, we'd have them locked off with proper girder locks or something like that, so that we had the one master key that would do everything. However, the riser cupboards in some, if not quite a few cases, also have the residence meters in it, so the gas meters and electric meters, which have to be read, or in some cases we've got residents with the top-up cards, so they need access to those things, and invariably are not particularly good with keys or remembering to lock the thing afterwards, and then we get ASB because of it. Or we get people sort of doing dodgy things in there, charging up their electric mobility scooters from power coming straight out the riser cupboard. So I'm probably guessing that you guys, have all come across similar issues. At the end of it, we ended up deciding we'd probably go down the route of having a master key and a suite of keys for the riser cupboards, so that the residents would have access, or those that needed access if they needed to get to their meters. But by the same token, we weren't spending shed loads of money on girder keys, because obviously residents tend to lose them, and then obviously we have issues with them floating about all over the place, etc., not knowing where they are. Keys and fobs management is a pain in the arse for us, and probably is for a lot of you guys as well. So that's something just that we've found that you guys may have already come across, or something you may need to think about. So yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Dave. Yeah. Right. Okay. I'm now going to move on to what once we've got all these floor plans in place, how do we then enhance them and enhance the data? So I'm going to be asking John Holt to step in a moment to just explain what they're doing. Just before I do that, though, is I'd just like to sort of position what our thinking. So as everybody I think knows, I wear two hats. There's my pro bono stuff here with BIM4Housing, but also Active Plan. We're providing support to people like Origin in terms of having spatial models. So what I'm just going to show for a second is the latest sort of work that we're doing in this area. So we're working on with this approach of having a QR code that can go onto a door, and that can then open up immediately a spatial plan in ActivePlan, which then has the unique object on it. So that's taking it to that particular door in a floor plan that allows you to see the context of where that door is. And also it can automatically test to see if it's got the information in it that was required. And it can also go out to a product library, which can then connect back to the manufacturer's data, which in turn can then also tie back to the spaces and the zones. So that's, if you like, the journey that we're taking with that. But obviously, this is only part of a wider ecosystem of different software applications that landlords can use. So, for example, this is what I'm going to hand over to John in a second. This is Plan Radar, which, you know, arguably is a competitive system to ActivePlan, but that's good. It's you know, there's different systems. What ActivePlan's doing, it's providing the live interactive model, whereas Plan Radar is using a PDF. But what it's very good at is data capture and on-site. Now, in addition to that, there's also other applications that are going to be used in terms of fire door inspections, fire door management and planning, like Keystone and CX. So, and that's the conversation that Matt just mentioned there. We're working with Civica to do the same type of integration here, because there's going to be different fire engineers, for example, are going to be using different software applications to capture their data. So it's important that we can keep this in an open and transparent way. And then just to show what John's given me, they've got the 34-point inspection that they go through, and he can go into this in a bit more detail. But the point is, what we're then doing is there's a lot of rich information that then is captured along the way. So I'll hand over, if I may, to John now for him to just explain what they do.
Hi, good morning, everybody, and thank you, George, for the introduction there. What I'll do is just give you a quick introduction, really, to well, fire consultants, specialists, really, what we do. And I know George has focused mainly on the fire doors. However, we're a lot more than fire doors, really. Fire doors probably makes up 10% of the business. And hopefully I should be able to show some of the services that we complete there. And interestingly, I've heard this morning already, the retrospectively, fire strategy reports being mentioned. But I'd say 40 to 50% of the business is built on independent fire inspections. And that's providing that independent scrutiny and independent advice to either tier 1 contractors or social housing or any client, really. And we give independent reviews, inspections and results, basically, without a dog in the fight. So we're not there to do the maintenance work. We're there to provide an independent perspective on behalf of the client. And what we do, we work along with tier 1 contractors, really, to hold the subcontractors, installers feet to the fires in certain aspects, to make sure that clients are get the correct service they should do. With regards to the fire doors, compartmentation, damper inspections, and fire risk assessments, we complete all those on what we, as George has mentioned there, Plan Radar. And there's a reason for we use Plan Radar, is because of the transparency it provides to our clients. So it's a live, active system that, as I've sat at the desk here, I can see what all the operatives around the country are doing at the moment, and their last inspection and their last inspection report. And transparency to the client is really important, I think, to create that trust. They can see what's happening live on site, and also it allows me and my sort of management team and quality assurance team to provide that high level quality, to make sure that as the operatives are on site, we can focus on what's happening and we can actually question it in a live forum. We use Plan Radar, and we've used it for the last 18 months. And one of the things that George and I have been talking about over the last couple of weeks, really, is collaborating together to try and provide or produce a golden platform, really, for clients. And we talked about the measured surveys this morning and the creation of 2D drawings, etc. And then there's the information on the asset caption, which George is heavily involved in. And then side by side is those fire inspections and how we can put them all together, really, in an envelope that we can provide to a client, which is a bit of a gold-plated solution, really. And this is more along the line of the building safety case reports, which most will be aware of. And it's a scope that we've been creating over the last sort of 12 to 18 months as a business, and we've been developing this along with other specialists in the fire safety field and our fire engineers to try and create a scope that we can provide to, which is efficient, provides value for money, and not as costly as, so it's cost effective that this can be done. Now we know that new builds are going to have these, but retrospectively, buildings over 18 metres HRRBs are going to require this. So it's putting together a scope that can provide this level of information to the clients, especially in housing associations, to then to be able to submit to the new building regulator when required. And that's really where we're at. I don't want to go into too much detail, but is there anything else you want me to cover, George?
It might be good to just show something in Plan Radar so that you can.
Right, I can't really do that at the moment because they're all live projects, and I can't turn off the. Unfortunately, I can't do that because they're live on site at the moment. It'd show all the live projects, and I don't think. Although I'd love to be able to show in Plan Radar, maybe another time I can do that.
Yeah, sure. We can set up a separate process, and in fact, if anybody's interested in that, maybe drop your name in the chat, and we can do a bit of a run through. Thank you very much, John.
By all means, yeah. And one other thing I would add, we mentioned earlier about the data capture and the surveys. What we find with Plan Radar is really good is the adaptability and the flexibility to it. So we have some clients, for instance, who will say, "Yeah, I want you to go and do a compartmentation survey, but at the same time, we want you to record. Can you record this for a certain time?" So we can alter the inspection ticket report as per the client. So if the client needs to specify certain things or capture certain bits of information, we can add or delete things from the ticket so that can be captured by inspectors as we go along. And it's a really flexible system, so it's really adaptable to the clients. And what we're all about really is providing the client exactly what they want. I'm more than really happy to. I can put a slideshow together for anybody. I can send that out to yourself to distribute if required, so it gives them a good view into it. If people are really interested, I can add them to our system and retreat it to test, and they can have a whirl around that as well, which is fine, and they can just play around with the system as it's live, and they can see what's going on and just see how adaptable it is to whether it's usable in forums.
The other thing that is probably worth mentioning, John, is that within our community, we've got quite a lot of different subject matter experts, and you're quite right that, I was mentioning fire doors earlier, and we're going to go on to Alan in a minute, so we're going to have more fire doors. But clearly, that's not the only asset that we need to be considering. And we've got on the call here, we've got Paul White, who's one of the subject matter experts on dampers. So you and I were talking about dampers yesterday, and that might be something that I'll set up an intro for you to talk to Paul, because Paul, apart from being a specialist in that, he's actually involved in writing the guidance and things like that. So Paul, do you want to just come on camera for a second, just so everybody knows where you are?
Hi,
there he is. So the reports that we've got in the black box with the publications, the sort of guidance that came out of the round tables, that was that Paul did some major contribution to that. And he's working with Paul McSorley at Mace, who's Paul's working through taking that to the next level. So making it a risk-based approach. Alan, can I introduce you? If I just explain how I came to meet Alan, we work with, do a lot of work with Sodexo, who are a hard FM company, and they've got a lot of sites where they're responsible for doing fire door inspections, either doing them directly or outsourcing that to somebody like John to do. And in fact, John does work with some of the Sodexo sites. But what Sodexo were looking to do was to make sure that their own internal asset management team are competent and proficient in doing fire door inspections. So Alan did some training for them, and in doing so, he showed us the work that he'd done with the NHS to create standardized inspection processes, which I felt were very impressive. And he's interested in taking that and modifying that guidance to reflect residential. So it's in that context I'd like to introduce you, Alan. Is that okay?
Yes, of course. I hope everyone can hear me okay and can see me. That's great. How long do you want me to talk for, George? I can talk for 5 minutes or longer.
Yeah, probably about 10 minutes, if that's okay.
Okay. Well, just by way of brief introduction, first of all, thanks, George, for inviting me along today, and nice to meet everybody. And I found today's meeting so far really, really interesting, because obviously, you know, I've got a passion for what you're trying to achieve at the moment. Just wanted to give you some background as to how I came to write a reference document on how to inspect fire doors in healthcare. I was actually going to retire in 2017 at the age of 63, having been in the passive fire protection industry for more than 40 years. But then, of course, the Grenfell Tower fire occurred in June, and like other people who've spoken today, I was really sort of passionate and really, really impressed by what Dame Judith Hackett had to say. So I wanted to stay around because I could see that changes were going to happen, and I want to contribute to those changes, no matter how modest my contribution might be. So it was in that context that I attended a NARFO meeting in 2018. NARFO is the NHS, the National Association for Healthcare Fire Officers. And I sort of challenged Mike Ralph, who's the principal fire engineer for NHS Improvement. I said, how is it that the NHS, which is certainly one of the biggest owners of fire doors in Europe, they don't have systems for inspecting fire doors? And he said, I take your point, Alan, but we don't even have standardized systems for fire risk assessing our buildings. He said, I know you're passionate about this subject, so why don't you join NARFO? Why don't you set up a steering group? And why don't you write a paper on how to inspect fire doors? So that's what I did. I joined NARFO London. I set up a steering group of 7 people. We wrote a paper on how to inspect fire doors, and we came up with 3 different systems, which I will briefly outline. We had it peer reviewed by more than 50 individuals and organisations, including Aviva Insurance, London Fire Brigade, the National Fire Chiefs Council. It was actually the National Fire Chiefs Council who said, this is a brilliant book, and they wrote a foreword to it, and they said that actually 90% of what you've written in this document applies to every fire door in the country. So why don't you create a generic version, and then why don't you sort of use it to write other specialists? So it was in that context that I met George and fully agreed that it'd be a great idea to sort of let you take on this paper, which has since been turned into a reference document. And why don't we create a dedicated version for HMOs, which is what I'd really be pleased to do. Now, just coming back to what's in the reference document, there's basically 3 different systems that are recommended as to how to inspect fire doors, depending on the life cycle and where that fire door is. What we're saying is you should have a type 1 inspection that's very prescriptive on brand new fire doors. And that's when you're comparing what's been installed with exactly what was specified, what was manufactured, just to ensure that everything is right. Because clearly that's the critical stage. If you get it right, then you're onto a winner. If you haven't installed it correctly and it's not used the right ironmongery and so on, you've got real massive problems to manage and maintain it from a default position. At best, you'll be managing it and maintaining it in a state of permanent non-compliance, which clearly isn't a good thing. So type 1 inspections are really prescriptive, and it's very easy. It's comparing what should be there with what is there. A type 2 inspection is far more pragmatic. You've got to try and identify what's there, and sometimes the only thing in front of you that can inform you what is the fire door is the actual fire door itself. There's unlikely to be a perfect golden thread of information. So we've created different systems, and the interesting thing about that is that you are tying it in with how to risk manage that door. Sometimes it's a question of what the location is of the door, the usage of the door, and to what extent you can risk manage it, and to what extent it can be suitable and sufficient for its location. It doesn't have to be a perfect fire door to meet the requirements of the fire safety order. So that's a type 2 inspection. And then a type 3 inspection is how to manage and maintain it for ongoing functionality, having been either type 1 or type 2 inspected. Now, I've already supplied George with a stripped down version of this in Word document. It's ready to go. I hate to use the term that it's oven ready, because Boris Johnson said that about Brexit, didn't he? But essentially, what we have is an oven ready paper of about 12,000, 13,000 words that I think can be easily adapted and made bespoke for BIM4Housing and for HMOs. And I guess what we need, what I'm suggesting, and I think what George would like, is volunteers to join a working group to create that adaptation. And I'm really interested in doing that, because dare I say, the NAFO book, the NAFO reference document, which is very good, but it was created with a team of ex-fire officers, and I think the average age was about 65. And I can see here that, you know, we've got a whole different range of people, and there's probably a lot more sort of tech stuff that we can put in and whatever. So I don't know if that I've brought it up to what you had in mind, George, but I think I'm more or less done.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful, and we already have quite a few experts from other parts of the industry, other parts of the BIM4Housing community as well. So, for example, we've got several manufacturers willing to contribute their time, and I actually see Will Perkins popped up earlier. So, are you there, Will? I saw him earlier. I think he's gone. So Will leads our manufacturers working group within BIM4Housing. But yeah, so we'll have input from manufacturers. But obviously, if people like John and other fire engineers, that's going to be absolutely critical. And we've also got maintenance organisations as well. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, I was just going to ask if the ASFP could be involved, as we are primarily trying to collect a lot of the information across the board for all passive measures within the property. You don't want to reinvent the wheel, so if something could be merged together, or if just to make sure they may or may not already be involved. I'm not sure.
If I could just jump in there, George, my company, Golden Thread Fire Delay, we are members of the ASFP. The ASFP did get involved in peer reviewing the original document, and I'm sure that they would be very happy. I know a number of contacts in the ASFP, and I'm sure that they would like to get involved.
Brilliant, thank you, and thanks, Sharon. if you're interested, if you feel that you can contribute to that work, I mean, I don't think you've shown the document, have you? Can I just show the generic document?
Yeah, absolutely. And just to let everybody know, it is emailable, and I can send everybody who wants it a copy as soon as this meeting's over, if that's what people want.
Yeah, I'm thinking first of all, if maybe we share the one that's got the photographs in it, because because that's part of I think probably a lot of the text is going to be common, isn't it? Hopefully.
Yes.
So let me just show you what Alan's already done. So this is a matter of standing on the shoulders of giants, I think. So basically, that's the community that obviously had put into it, and the NFCC. But this is the way it's structured. So it's a substantial piece of work, 72 pages, but it actually is really well broken down. So there's compliance inspection of new fire doors, existing fire doors, and then the ongoing work. And then how do you put together a robust fire door management system? So now the copy here, Alan's issued to us in a Word format, so we can review that. But what we obviously need are photographs that are going to be, if you like, residentially based rather than, in this particular case, in healthcare. But I think that there's, some really powerful stuff here that we could we could work on and build on. And I think a little product placement there by Alan, quite right. And then we've got the hinges here. Well, one of the things that Alan explained to me was that the CE there may well, on certain products that have come from China, actually not be the CE, the European standard. It stands for Chinese export, which is a bit of a surprise. I don't know if people are aware of that, but it can be. It's a slightly different way of writing it, isn't it, Alan? But it's close enough that it would mislead people.
Oh well, yes. When it comes to fire doors, the devil's always in the detail, and there's a lot to get wrong with fire doors, unfortunately.
Yeah. So this is the document. I mean, as a community, as a group here, do you think this would be a useful resource for us? Deafening silence.
Absolutely, no, absolutely. We've gone the this is Paul Hales. We've gone the sort of accredited inspector route. So we've got 3 staff that have gone through that training course, and obviously they're going to have to then build up their competence. But reference documents like that explain, that weird beast that is a fire door and its many forms, and what is acceptable up to the point where it's not acceptable, and there's a repair or a replacement. Yeah, I'd love to rip off your experience, and your knowledge, absolutely, and it's for everybody.
Can I just quickly jump? I think it's also when we do the fire remediation, even though it's facade, sometimes we do end up looking at the buildings internally. We do have the fire engineers coming on board to do an assessment, but it is very useful for us to have an initial idea and what are the doors in any case. So I think it's a really helpful guide for the remediation team here. Because yes, you can see a door, you can estimate, but then it's good to have a better understanding what exactly am I looking at, what I should be looking at, what can I see and what can I not see on a door that should be there essentially. So not just waiting for the fire engineer report, but then if you have an understanding, then you also can advise the client better, and you can communicate with the fire engineers as soon as you get the reports back on different solutions, on what can be done, if they need to be replaced, or is it just a signage missing, or little details that we tend to miss, I think. And I just saw a picture in that report when you were measuring the thickness of the screw, I think. I don't think it's something that you think of when you do go on site and to have a look on these elements. So yeah, I think it's really helpful to have the report.
Thank you very much, Judith. Anybody else? Anyone else that would be interested in participating in that?
I think there's 2 levels of participation required here, George. I think we need a working group of maybe no more than 6 or 7 people, bearing in mind that 90% of it's already there. It shouldn't be too difficult to get the other 10% in place. And I think what we then need is to send it out for peer review. And I think, you know, if you go back to page 1 of the document, you'll see that when we peer reviewed it, we had about 50 or 60 names in there. Now we can do the same. Potentially everybody in this group could have their name there as having peer reviewed it. And I don't think that would do any harm for people to help people in communication with fire and rescue and so on going forward. I think if people within fire and rescue were to see the level of commitment by this group to get it right, and also, dare I say, you could send it to your fire and rescue and say, have you got any thoughts on this? Would you like to contribute? I just think there's absolutely no negatives there. It's a total win-win. No one could accuse you of not having taken this subject seriously and not tried to do your very best to get it right.
Absolutely. Okay, right. So if that's the case, if you're interested in participating, if you could drop your name, just drop your details into the chat, then we can pull this together. Like I say, I've already got quite a few people who are keen to contribute. So we can work with Alan, myself, Richard, and Alan can work together to actually put together a work stream, and that work stream will be to basically look at this, review it, and then come back. If anybody would like a copy of what we've already got, again, just ask for that in the chat, and we can send that over.
Can I just point out, George, that the document you showed was the generic document, which isn't really the full Monty. I would prefer people to be shown the healthcare version, which I'd be very happy to send it if you haven't got it.
I've got that.
If that's the one that's probably more like the finished article that we're looking to replicate, I would say.
Of course. Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Just one other thing, George, if I may. I'm actually now writing a reference document on fire dampers, fire stopping, and cavity barriers with a NARFO London working group. And I was very interested to hear that Paul White is involved in this group. And if you could introduce me to Paul White, I'd be very, very pleased to ask Paul if you could contribute for the peer review.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've got very clear views on a lot of this, so yeah,
I'm sure. Super. Thank you very much.
That's no problem at all.
Paul's also got a community of people that he works with as well. So I think that's because it's not just a matter of that. It's also a matter of where this sits in design, where this sits in installation, isn't it? It's not just the product itself, and also how it fits into a compartment and how it's going to perform as part of a complete setup. So that's critical.
We have some of the issues that doors have, and we have the issues that quite often you can't see what's gone on behind the frame or in the solid wall or whatever it is. and there seems to be a bit of a reluctance with regard to inspections about commenting on the penetration seals and the compartmentation, which if you go and inspect it, you have to tell somebody, because they've not got a clue. And if there's a hole in the fire stopping, or it's the damper's not in the wall, then it's a problem.
Yeah.
Just because it opens and closes like a door doesn't mean that it works. Sorry, it works, but it doesn't work as part of compartmentation.
Yeah, and I think absolutely. Thank you. I think as part of the getting this whole golden thread together, there's a lot of enthusiasm and support from the manufacturers community, manufacturers and installers. The challenge is that some of the things that they're putting in place are going to break the golden thread. And what I mean by that is that if, for example, you've got a door manufacturer, a number of the door manufacturers are putting RFIDs or components into their doors. So when they install it, it goes off to a specialist service that is tracking that particular door, and it's got all of the contents and all of the information about the door, which is fantastic. But the problem is that it's a closed system. So therefore, on a normal development, you might have 2 or 3 different door manufacturers. And if they each have a subscription to a different service, it means that the organization like Equans or Mears or whoever's doing the maintenance on that particular building won't have access to some of that information, because it's provided in a locked up way behind a different application. Whereas what I believe we need to do is to make sure that information is open and available, so that the person that's actually doing the needs to know about all the doors in the building is able to get that information. Now, obviously, that's got to be done in such a way that is protecting people's IP and all that sort of stuff. But we do need to, in my view, make it open data. I say open to people that have got the appropriate clearance to get it. Does anybody have a contrary view on what I've just said there? Because it is something that I think is quite important. I'll take silence to be acceptance. Good. Okay. Well, right. So I think that the last thing I really would like everybody to do is to answer the questionnaire in terms of what points. Jess, can you just pull up the questionnaire for a moment for us so that people can see if they've not done it on the Microsoft Forms?
Yeah.
Just pull that up now, please. Okay, so what we'd like you to do is to just go through these, and it's quite interesting that Ali Imam, who he couldn't make it just now today, but he's actually completed it, and his number 1 priority is decent homes, and his number 2 priority was mold. Now, he's head of asset management at Phoenix. And one of the things I think it will be interesting is whether some of the other people at Phoenix maybe have an alternative set of priorities, which I can quite imagine they would have. Because, you know, if you're responsible for, let's say, the building safety, that probably is your priority. And energy, for example, might be less of a priority for you. But what we'd like to do is get people's views on these things, not just perhaps your view, but if you're able to share this with other people in your organization, it'll give us a little bit of a strong feedback that we can work with. Is everybody okay with? Does anybody have an issue with doing this? Could I ask you to do this effectively today, so that we've got something to work with? Nobody objecting? Okay.
George, do we have a link to this?
Yes, you should have a link to it.
Okay.
But if Jess, can you put the link in the chat?
Yeah, I've already done that.
But we'll also email it out to everybody. I think that's probably the sensible thing, so that you've got it. And I mean, the more people that we've got that have got a view, it's going to make our task easier going forward. And we obviously want to try and respond to what you consider to be the priorities, because mold certainly is something that I mean, in the 5 minutes we've got left, has anybody got any views on that as to how they're managing it? I know, Dave, you've got a team within Origin that are looking at mold, haven't you? I imagine everybody has.
Yeah, it's definitely jumped up the priorities since that case before Christmas with the young lad up north. And the thing is for housing associations, we're unlike local authorities. It was never, well, it still is not a legal responsibility for us to do full HHSRS assessments. And obviously damp and mold being one of the 29 HHSRS criteria, it meant that we had to sort of, if you like, almost sort of look at doing an HHSRS assessment just to cover some of the key things like damp and mold that it still gets picked up in stock condition surveys anyway, but not necessarily reported on it as it should be. So we've sort of gone down that route. And obviously where we've got disrepair cases, we're doing validations to make sure that, whether it is a decent homes failure or not. But then once again, even within decent homes failures, providing you can decant the tenant or you've got remedial work in place, being done, it's not necessarily a failure. It's only if you leave the tenant, you've recognised and validated that there's mould issues there, and then you don't do anything about it. And which was the case with the case before Christmas. And also, it's quite high priority in the news. There's a lot of people jumping on this. There's a few ambulance chasers out there pushing people to report damp and mould and ask for compensation. So it's definitely something that's been kicked up the agenda at exec and board level, and we have to respond to that.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else? Is that something else that's on people's radars? Anybody else have an observation on that? Oh, okay. Well, one last thing that I've come across that may or may not be of interest is in hospitals, because we do a lot of work in hospitals. One of the things that they're introducing is a new, a very interesting technology that goes in with LED lighting replacements. And what it does, it puts a sensor in the lighting, it replaces the sensor that's in the lighting, which is there to control the LED lighting, and turns it into a mesh network for the whole of the building. So it's a very low cost way of making an existing building a smart building where there are sensors in every space. So those sensors can measure things like condensation, temperature, mold, etc. or not mold, but the conditions that would lead to mold, and also presence. So what it's being used for in hospitals is to be able to identify which rooms are being used and which aren't, and the levels of utilization, and also using that to then tie back to energy consumption and the like. But I'm wondering whether that might be a useful thing, whether in residential developments, whether there's relamping exercises going on, perhaps in common areas, that we could take advantage of this type of technology. Could I ask if anybody has an interest in that, because it's something we could arrange for a presentation on? Okay, does the silence mean that nobody's are people doing LED replacements? I feel as though I'm in a seance. Okay, all right. Well, if you are interested in that, we can perhaps set something up to cover it. Right. So wrapping up now, is there anything anybody else wants to raise? Have you found it useful today? Mustafa, thank you.
Yes.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Hi, Bex. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everyone.
Good. And thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We've recorded it and we'll do a transcription like we normally do. So you'll have something there as a record. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Cheers.
guys.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, George.
Bye. Bye.